Hi, everyone. Just a couple of comments on Neptune, Saturn, and Jupiter. So basically, let's just get that on track. So just pretty much from the full moon, this is the date of the full moon, 11th of June, Jupiter, ingresses into Cancer. And so I did touch a little bit on this in the full moon transmission. That is, Jupiter will be squaring Saturn. So I have spoken about that, and perhaps listen to that video to get the information for that. But the other thing that's going on at the same time is Jupiter is square Neptune, and I just forgot to bring that into the transmission. Now, the square from Jupiter to both Neptune and Saturn is only going to occur once. Um, and that's probably a fortunate thing, actually, because the square from Jupiter to either of those planets, Saturn and Neptune, is a pretty difficult portal. And here's the reason why. First of all, before I go into the unpacking of some of the possibilities, just know that from the 11th of June right through till about almost close to the 11th of July, so really for a month, okay? So for the next 4 or 5 weeks, what I'm about to describe is pretty much in play. The square between Jupiter and Saturn, as I said, I've spoken about, but just a quick recap. It's very much connected to what was seeded in 2020. Now, there's a lot of different things that have happened in people's lives in the last 5 years pertaining to what exploded in 2020, and then subsequently what the choices that people made, right? On every single level. And this is a very serious topic, because unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that a lot of people um, have really risked their health. And I have a family member who's one of those people because of the conforming to the narrative. This family member ended up with a cardiac issue, and his life will never be the same now. So this is a very serious matter. It's not a laughing matter at all. Um, in any case, the square between Jupiter and Saturn, it is a first quarter square. And as I mentioned in the full moon video, that first quarter square has been coined crisis in action, which it's a very tension provoking type of energy, but it causes people, or it causes us, um, well, nothing causes us to do anything, but the way this energy feels for us is that we need to take some type of action now. Something needs to change. And there's a strong desire and motivation to do so as well, because squares produce a very, very, very strong energy. They can push through anything. And the square aspect, as I've said over the years, the reason we tend to make changes during a square aspect between two planets is because what is so uncomfortable, is so unworkable, is so just cannot, we just cannot continue. So we are, as it feels, forced to make a change. So it's good in that sense because it creates that such an uncomfortable feeling where you must make a change. And of course, quite apart from the seeding of this that began in 2020, which, clearly was connected to all of humanity and what was seeded at that time, Saturn and Jupiter are also, in the context of this, also speak to the all matters to do with our desire to be free. Jupiter, our connection to faith, our connection to our beliefs, our connection to seeing the bigger picture and having wisdom. And, anything that Jupiter touches, it expands. Whereas Saturn does the complete opposite to that. It retracts and constricts. And so Saturn would be the archetype that corresponds to limitation of freedom. All limits are ruled by Saturn, and all desire to grow and expand corresponds to Jupiter. So when those two are square each other, there is a difficult process within ourselves where we are battling with or contending with this element of life where we are seeking to broaden our horizons and expand ourselves and our experience in the face of Saturn standing there saying, no, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or you've got limitations over here, you've got limitations over there. So it's trying to find a balance between the two. Now, as I said, fortunately, this is the final sort of square between Saturn and Jupiter, although it's in different signs now. The previous squares occurred in the previous signs those planets were in. And this is the final one. So this is the final door that opens to really hand you the opportunity to really work something out here about your life in the context of your desire to broaden your horizons on every single level. And also it's I think it's a test of our faith as well, because Saturn comes in and places the restrictions and says no, as it were. And so the test then becomes, how strong is your belief, in the bigger picture, outside of the material world. Saturn is the material world, and Jupiter rules the sky. It rules the infinite sky, stars, the cosmos, the ability to have that absolute unlimited view and vision on yourself and life, and to not allow that to be shaken up. That the deep belief and trust that we have in Source, God, Goddess, consciousness, whatever you wish to name it, that energy that is infinite, which is immutable consciousness, as Jeffrey Wolf Green says, it can never be destroyed, but only change in form. We are connected to that infinite source, despite of anything that may be going on. And so the Saturn square Jupiter, whilst it can pose some limitations, it's also a test of our own faith as well, in ourself and in the infinite source creation to all things. So that's one part. And the other aspect is between Jupiter and Neptune, which are also squaring each other, and that too is only happening one time. And as I said, both these they're obviously, it's all happening at the same time because Neptune and Saturn are conjunct each other, and so they are both squaring Jupiter at the same time. So for the next 5 weeks, all of this is in play. Now, a Jupiter-Neptune hard aspect is pretty tricky. And I can tell you that through experience because I have Jupiter and Neptune very closely aspected in my chart. And whilst from a spiritual, for lack of a better word, because that term has been used so much and it means so many different things to everybody, right? But when I use that word, I guess what I'm really speaking to is the understanding that this reality is just one reality. It's just one reality in our physical form that we experience and co-create with and or feel completely limited by, depending on what we understand and what we can see. So Jupiter and Neptune together at that spiritual level, from the point of view of source, the creation to everything, our ability to have a connection with that, our sense of having faith no matter what, that's Jupiter Neptune. So it has, on that spiritual level, it's quite a beautiful energy and can be very inspiring, incredibly inspiring, uplifting, inspiring, tuning us into the spirit world that offers actually so much more than this third dense dimension reality. But the flip side to that coin of Neptune and Jupiter is that because of the elusive nature of Neptune, the disillusionment aspect of Neptune, it can bring about false hope. And investing your faith and hope and trust and visions into something or someone where you will end up losing because you will essentially not be seeing the situation, the person, the opportunity as it may be appearing in a clear light. So it's misguided trust, basically. It's thinking that it's a sure thing. It's thinking that no way would that person ever do something like that to me. That person is amazing. They are really honest and integral and so on and so forth. So it's misplacing our faith into something or someone where we end up realizing that, in fact, they were not what I thought they were at all. Now, this extends even further into, taking risks, for example, gambling. Now, that can be in the world of money, right? Digital monies and that world. I've just even forgotten the name of it because I really have no interest in it at all. Stocks, and shares and whatnots, right? I mean, that's that side of life. That's always a gamble. I don't care how smart somebody thinks they are or how much they think they know the game. And, they could be obsessed and sitting there watching the stocks all day long. I've seen people do it. I used to work with somebody who used to do it all the time and thinking, it's a sure thing. It's never a sure thing. It's all ruled by Neptune. um, so there is no controlling that, that level of this reality. There's always a risk factor involved. And that's fine, each to their own, right? I'm just bringing that up because if you are one of those people, then, at this point in time, from 11th of June till the 11th of July, it would not be the best time, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Not that I'm an expert on stocks and exchanges and things like that, not at all. I just know it's completely ruled by Neptune. That I know. And so for the next few weeks, it's not an ideal time to place your faith and hope and trust and risk things that, you might think are a sure thing when they're not. And that can extend further into a lot of other different things as well, because that can be something that you're planning to collaborate with somebody else, whether that's financially or otherwise. You're seeing it as a sure thing, and it can never be. It can be very, very misguided. And also, with Jupiter and Saturn, because they are the two archetypes that correspond to expansion and restriction, there's also a message there saying that we need to kind of rein in a little bit here, and not just, throw caution to the wind and just go for it completely, Jupiter, because that's what Jupiter wants to do. That's what it inspires us to do. And sometimes there's a very good timing for things like that to take place. And that would be when Jupiter and Uranus are aspecting each other. And that happened to me last year when Jupiter and Uranus formed a conjunction in Taurus. I had a massive breakthrough in something that is so extremely important to me. And I know a lot of people did. So when I see Jupiter Uranus aspects, I see that as a very favorable window for breakthroughs and opportunities that you just never expected. And they come literally so suddenly out of the blue, which is what Uranus corresponds to, the unpredictable, the sudden happenings of things that you just didn't see coming. But that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about Saturn, which is the opposite to Uranus. Saturn is the opposite to Jupiter as well, archetypally speaking, energetically speaking, from a principle perspective in terms of what these divinities and archetypes speak to. So when there is a passage that's saying, hey, a bit of restriction or a bit of restraint is necessary here, then, by being rebellious towards that, it's not going to serve you, because the placement of these archetypes, these divinities, these planets that you see in this circle, this is where they are in the tropical zodiac. And I'm just talking about tropical zodiac today again. This is where they are in the sky for everyone. For everyone. There is no exception. So we can't manipulate where things are at any given moment, but through the awareness and understanding of the sky and of astrology, the sacred language, the sacred science, then we can actually manipulate from the point of view of having the awareness enables us to make wiser choices, to understand there is a timing on everything that does happen. A Jupiter Saturn, it could be like, what's the metaphor that I was just trying to come up with? I've just forgotten it, but it's trying to push through a wall, Saturn, that you can't break down, because Jupiter and Saturn are squaring each other. And a square also reflects two energies trying to reside. They are trying to be the boss, right, in that zone. And they're squaring each other, so they're butting heads. So you can't just step into one and completely ignore the other. It's squares ultimately cannot be resolved, but there are things that we can do that can help ease the tension by the correct choices we make. So with Jupiter square Saturn, there is some restriction applied relative to maybe some of the ideals and dreams and things that we want to expand in our life. Now, this is just there for the next 5 weeks, so it's not there for the rest of your life. So we don't need to panic, but it is good to be aware. And again, secondly, with the Neptune Jupiter, that the Saturn Jupiter you can probably deal with better, because Saturn always gives you the reality. the sobering reality of what is that we can't deny. We may not like it, we may want to ignore it or push it out the way, but it's still there. And we just need to work with it. But when you're talking about Neptune and Jupiter, well, that's another stream altogether. That's complete la la land. You know, that can be complete and utter disillusionment and disappointment by misplacing our faith in something or someone. So I just wanted to share those few comments because I thought, you know, it's important to address that given that this is going to be active for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And obviously that's going to have, you know, a significant impact in world events. But once again, I like to bring it up from the point of view of our own personal life and how we can think about this. And of course, the other things to consider just before I go, with the Saturn squared Jupiter, if you are a night birth, this is probably more of a difficult passage because Saturn is always more difficult for people who are born at night, period. No exceptions. But you could be at a stage in life where Saturn has given you so many lessons and you really understand now that, you do have limits and you've got to honor them. A Saturn influence of a person born at night is not knowing when enough is enough. And that can really cause havoc in people's lives. And that can be through in so many different ways. That can be because you're always giving, always helping, right? And the only thing you discover is that you're completely drained. There's got to be limits and boundaries. That's the best thing that Saturn really helps us, stabilize in our life, right? But as I said, if you're a night birth, this square might be more difficult. But again, you could be at a time where you've really learned how to handle that Saturn energy. And what was the other thing I wanted to say there? Is it about Neptune? Something else, but now something else has come to mind, and I've forgotten the other thing, but something else has just popped through. One thing to remember here as well in this mix that's happening, Jupiter is one that's going to uplift us. That's what Jupiter does. It uplifts us, right? It inspires us. It inspires vision. It inspires seeing beyond the apparent limitations and restrictions and negativities and dramas and whatever, right? It inspires us to go into a much more free space within ourselves. So, and Jupiter is in Cancer here, which is its exalted position. So it's a very strong and happy Jupiter, and that can help us. And I think, perhaps some of the benefits as well. Oh, well, look, I said I'll come back and speak to Jupiter in Cancer separately. So I still intend to do that. So I'll just retract from that comment. But yeah, we just need to think about the Neptune-Saturn conjunction in this picture as well, as those two are together conjunct squaring Jupiter. And, Saturn, Neptune in itself, that can be a very difficult energy, just it can bring about anxiety, a lot of negativity, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. Those are really important keywords for a Neptune-Saturn conjunction. Now, this new birth is going to occur in February 2026. That is Neptune and Saturn at the 0 degrees Aries, right? So there's something extraordinary and profound that's going to be birthed at that time. But we are still, once again, and I've touched on this in previous videos. We are still finishing, ending a lot of different things in our life. And, I've been walking around, and it's not just in the last few days. I've probably been seeing this for quite some time. I guess since 2020, to be honest, but just even recently in the last few weeks, when I walk around and I look at people and I look at, just anything or anyone, it's like I'm standing outside and I'm just watching what looks like a movie, you know. Um, it's just a bizarre feeling. It's sort of hard to describe, but it's this very strong awareness of just how numb our societies and cultures have become through the material world. Just how incredibly numb, oblivious, um, so disconnected. And I notice that every day. And sometimes it makes me really sad, actually. And then other times I just think, well, I'm grateful that I can see through that I can see beyond that I can see things that are, to me at least, feel so much more important, that bring, much deeper meaning to this existence. If I didn't have this, if God didn't give me this gift of understanding the sky and the stars, with the shape of this world and with the, very difficult situations I've personally been through myself over the years as well, I just would really have no point to even want to be here. That's how intense it's felt. But that's Pluto coming to my ascendant as well, transiting Pluto. So anyway, that's just a little personal side note. But just be mindful of the Saturn Neptune conjunction. It is absolutely 100% speaking to a new era. We've seen the crumbling of the old, right? And things don't crumble overnight. Everything takes time. So this new conjunction between them in 2026 is the beginning of a new paradigm. And so there's so much that we still don't know about what's going to be produced from that. But one of the things that is certain is that it can bring up a lot of fear and anxiety, because there's this underlying sense of, I don't know what the fuck is real and I don't know what isn't anymore. That's a Saturn Neptune conjunction in a nutshell. What's real and what isn't. And that can play on our psychology in pretty significant ways, because people who don't have a strong psychology, who don't have a lot of self-awareness, who don't understand the deeper meaning of things, and so on and so forth, right? Which is a lot of people on the planet. Imagine the kind of havoc that this Neptune Saturn can play on someone's psychology when you are unsure of what the fuck is real and what isn't. So that's that's playing out at the moment as well. Even though they haven't formed their exact conjunction yet, they're still there conjunct in the same sign. And that anxiety in this case is very much linked to the fact that we are still in the process of absolutely finishing things. There is no return to that past life. It is a past life now. What we were living up to 2020, that's gone. That world has completely gone. And so we're at, I want to say again, in that sort of middle ground, no man's land, where we don't know exactly where we are heading. We may have some ideas, we may have some dreams, some desires, certainly a lot of uncertainties. And that's the key point, uncertainty with Saturn Neptune. So just keep that in mind, because if those sorts of thoughts and feelings creep in, that's where it's coming from. And ultimately, of course, that will pass, but that doesn't pass overnight. First of all, we've got to wait for these two to get together in February of 2026. That's still several months away. And even then, it's not necessarily going to be when they conjunct each other. And the new era is sort of set in stone, as it were, and Saturn rules stones, of course. It's not going to be, oh, okay, well, off we go, and now we know everything and we know exactly what's going to be. It's not going to be the case at all. So it's just good to be aware of this so that we can, when we're checking in on our own psychology and checking in on ourself and the perspectives and the thoughts that we are having, so that we can, just have some self-care, some time out from things that may be creating more confusion or, just taking away your energy, draining you, so on and so forth. Okay, I am going to sign out and I'll see you soon.